It looked like just another van run through the Midlands. White paint, service logos on the side, pallets of frozen chicken stacked neatly in the back. To passing drivers, it was nothing more than a routine delivery, one of hundreds that streamed in from the docks each day. But this van was different. Behind the frost-covered packaging lay something worth millions. Tightly wrapped blocks of high-purity cocaine smuggled in under the cover of food. For months, a network of men stretched from Birmingham to Essex had been running one of the most audacious smuggling lines in Britain. They called themselves businessmen. Police called them an organized crime group, a cartel hidden in plain sight. Their methods were clever, almost cinematic. Tyres stuffed with £500,000 in cash, air compressors gutted and rebuilt as vaults, encrypted EncroChat phones buzzing with orders, and behind it all, two key figures, Moninder Dosanjh and his right-hand man, Amandeep Rishi, orchestrating a flow of drugs that would poison communities nationwide. It all came crashing down in July 2020 when a single van was stopped on its return from Essex. Inside, over 150 kilos of cocaine disguised as frozen chicken. It started with the docks. Essex 2020, containers unloaded every day under the watchful eyes of customs and port staff. Among the steel boxes were consignments of frozen chicken, packed on pallets, wrapped in thick plastic, ready for wholesalers across Britain. To almost everyone, it looked like routine business, but hidden inside, the meat shipments concealed something much more dangerous. Between March and August 2020, investigators from the West Midlands Regional Organised Crime Unit, ROCU, pieced together what would become one of the most significant smuggling cases in the region. Their target, a Birmingham-based organised crime group that had found a way to use the frozen food trade as cover for industrial-scale cocaine importation. The method was deceptively simple. Vans disguised as service vehicles collected pallets of frozen chicken from the docks. On the surface, these were just delivery runs, but embedded in the shipments were sealed blocks of high-purity cocaine. The cold storage kept the cargo stable, and the packaging gave it legitimacy. To anyone glancing inside, it was nothing more than food. One seizure told the story better than any words could. When officers stopped a van on its return from Essex, they found over 150 kilograms of cocaine hidden in the chicken pallets. The drugs were tightly packed, layered to avoid easy detection, and carried a potential street value in the tens of millions. But this was just the beginning. Investigators soon learned that the gang was not moving a few dozen kilos. EncroChat messages, retrieved after the encrypted network was cracked, revealed discussions of ton-scale shipments carefully routed from the docks to storage sites across the West Midlands. The frozen chicken shipments were only one part of a wider system. ROCU would later uncover cash hidden in tyres, money passed through compressors and industrial equipment, and stash houses holding hundreds of kilograms more. But at the heart of it all was the food trade, an everyday commodity used as the perfect smokescreen. The import line was the gang's lifeline. Every successful shipment meant more cocaine pushed onto Britain's streets, more money laundered back through criminal networks. For months, the system ran smoothly. But by July 2020, ROCU had seen enough. They were ready to act, and the van leaving Essex that summer carried not just chicken and cocaine, but the seeds of the gang's downfall. Behind every shipment, there were men pulling the strings. The frozen chicken cartel wasn't a loose band of opportunists. It was a structured operation with defined roles, chains of command, and responsibilities spread across 10 individuals. At the top was Moninder Dosanjh, 39 years old. Prosecutors described him as the head of the conspiracy, the man orchestrating imports, directing logistics, and ensuring the flow of cocaine reached its destinations. For his part, he would later receive the heaviest sentence, 16 years and 8 months. By his side was Amandeep Rishi, 42, who acted as Dosanjh's deputy. He coordinated transport, liaised with trusted couriers, and managed contacts both upstream and downstream. Rishi's role earned him 11 years and 2 months behind bars. Beneath them were the handlers, the men who took the risks on the road. Mohammed Usman, Rizwan Ali, and Kamran Hussein drove the service-style vans, collected loads from the docks, and shuttled consignments across the Midlands. They dealt directly with the pallets of chicken and sometimes the cash. Each received sentences of around 9 years. Others worked from warehouses, moving crates, hiding drugs, or guarding the stash sites. Peter Masih, Mandeep Singh, and Mithab Hussain formed this layer. To the outside world, they were ordinary workers. In truth, they were integral cogs in the machine, ensuring shipments were repackaged, concealed, and distributed. They received terms between 7 and 8 years. Money laundering was another vital piece. Ashtiaq Ahmed and Sayed Hashemian managed cash. Ahmed, operating from Birmingham, moved sums disguised in tyres and compressors. Hashemian received cash transfers in London. Together they kept the proceeds circulating, washing dirty money back into the system. Their sentences were shorter, just over 2 years each, but their roles were crucial. EncroChat messages later read in court reflected this structure. Dosanjh and Rishi gave instructions, drivers sent updates from the road, warehouse hands confirmed deliveries, moneymen spoke of tyres, compressors, and cash drops. Each role was separate, but together they formed a network built on secrecy and trust. And trust was everything. A single weak link could expose the entire chain. By spreading responsibilities across 10 men, the cartel created resilience. But in the end, when investigators pieced together surveillance, seizures, and encrypted messages, that same network became evidence. Each man's role was laid bare, and together they carried the weight of more than 80 years in prison. The genius and the arrogance of the frozen chicken cartel lay in their methods. They didn't rely on simple handoffs or street-level drops. Instead, they built an infrastructure designed to fool both the casual observer and professional enforcement. Frozen chicken pallets were the most striking disguise. Packed into vans straight from Essex docks, the boxes carried both legitimate meat and carefully concealed cocaine. The cold storage kept the packages preserved, while the commercial wrapping gave everything an air of legitimacy. Customs inspectors, glancing at the surface, saw only chicken. The reality was blocks of high-purity cocaine stacked deep within. But food wasn't the only cover. The gang also used service-style vans outfitted with hidden compartments. From the outside, these vehicles looked like plumbing or mechanical vans. Inside, tyres, compressors, and industrial machinery had been re-engineered to hide criminal cargo. One of the most dramatic seizures came when officers cut open a set of tyres. Instead of air and rubber, they found bundles of notes, nearly £500,000 in cash. Elsewhere, investigators dismantled an air compressor only to discover it had been hollowed out and stuffed with money. These tricks were designed to buy time. On the roads of Britain, a van stacked with tyres or tools would never draw attention. A compressor in the back looked like just another day's work for a tradesman. The gang counted on this invisibility, on blending into the noise of ordinary life. EncroChat messages seized later showed how carefully these methods were discussed. Members spoke about tyres, compressors, and wheels, thinly veiled terms for cash concealment. They coordinated timings, routes, and vehicle swaps with the kind of precision more often seen in logistics companies than street gangs. The methods worked. For a while, shipments made it through the docks. Cash moved across counties. Cocaine was stored in warehouses without immediate detection. For months, the cartel proved their system was robust. But no disguise lasts forever. Surveillance teams had been watching. Digital forensics were breaking through encrypted phones. And in July 2020, when a van returning from Essex was pulled over, the elaborate covers collapsed. Frozen chicken, tyres, compressors, all of it exposed. What had once been the cartel's cleverest shield became their most damning evidence. For months, the regional organized crime unit had watched quietly. Surveillance tracked vans as they left the docks, followed them along the M25 and into the Midlands. Patterns were noted. Who drove, where they stopped, which warehouses received the pallets. Still, investigators needed the critical break, the piece of evidence that would transform intelligence into proof. That moment came in July 2020. Officers moved in on a van returning from the Essex docks. On paper, it was transporting frozen chicken, but when they forced open the pallets, they uncovered a staggering 150 kilograms of high-purity cocaine. It was a haul worth tens of millions, and it confirmed what Roku had suspected. The food shipments were a cover for industrial-scale smuggling. The stop triggered a cascade. Arrests followed across Birmingham, Wolverhampton, Walsall, and beyond. Warehouses were searched, vans dismantled. Inside tyres, officers found nearly £500,000 in cash. In an air compressor, more bundles of notes were wedged into hidden compartments. The pieces of the network began to unravel, but the physical seizures told only half the story. The other half came from a digital ghost, EncroChat. For years, organized crime relied on this encrypted platform to communicate, believing it was impenetrable. Handles were anonymous, messages self-destructed. To gangs, it was the perfect tool. What they didn't know was that in 2020, European investigators had cracked the system. Suddenly, conversations once thought invisible were exposed, and among them were the words of the frozen chicken cartel. EncroChat logs revealed how Dosanjh and Rishi issued instructions from the top. Drivers updated their locations. Warehouse men confirmed deliveries. Cash handlers spoke in code about tyres and compressors. The language was careful, but the meaning was clear. One message discussed quantities in the hundreds of kilos. Another spoke of timing runs between the docks and stash houses. Others referenced payments, exports, and the risks of detection. Piece by piece, the chats built a map of the organization: who did what, when, and how often. In court, prosecutors described the combination as devastating. The drugs in the pallets proved the conspiracy existed. The cash in tyres showed the profits. And the EncroChat transcripts connected each man to his role. Together, the evidence left little room for denial. The gang had believed their frozen chicken trick was bulletproof. They had trusted their tyres and compressors to hide their wealth. And they had counted on EncroChat to keep their words secret. In the end, all three became the instruments of their downfall. By the summer of 2024, the investigation had come full circle. What began with frozen chicken pallets and suspicious vans had evolved into one of the most significant prosecutions ever handled by the West Midlands Regional Organised Crime Unit. At Birmingham Crown Court in August 2024, the evidence was laid out in stark detail. Jurors and judges were shown the frozen pallets split open, cocaine bricks stacked inside like illicit treasure. They saw the tyres slashed apart, bundles of £20 and £50 notes spilling out. They watched as an air compressor was dismantled, revealing cash hidden deep inside its frame. And then came the digital evidence, the EncroChat transcripts tying names to handles, roles to crimes. One by one, the 10 men admitted guilt. The weight of evidence was simply too great to contest. Prosecutors described the enterprise as sophisticated and commercial scale, covering importation, exportation, national wholesale supply, and laundering millions. The sentences reflected the scale of the crimes. Maninder Dosanjh, 39, 16 years, 8 months. Amandeep Rishi, 42, 11 years, 2 months. Mohammed Usman, 9 years, 8 months. Rizwan Ali, 9 years, 6 months. Kamran Hussain, 9 years, 2 months. Peter Masih, 8 years. Mandeep Singh, 7 years, 2 months. Mithab Hussain, 7 years, 2 months. Ashtiyaq Ahmed, 2 years, 7 months. Syed Hashemian, 2 years, 3 months. In total, more than 80 years of prison time were handed down. For the families of the men, the courtroom marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, years spent behind bars. For police, it was a validation of years of painstaking work. And for communities across the West Midlands, it was proof that even the most sophisticated gangs could be unmasked. Judge and prosecutors alike emphasized the harm caused. Every kilo of cocaine meant lives damaged, communities destabilized, and violence in the shadows. Every pound laundered represented profit extracted from misery. This was not just a logistics operation, it was a pipeline of destruction. As the men were led away to begin their sentences, the courtroom echoed with the weight of their downfall. A network that once moved in silence, hidden behind chicken pallets and encrypted phones, had been brought into the light. When the sentences were handed down in August 2024, the frozen chicken cartel was finished. 10 men together serving over 80 years. But the impact of their crimes and of the investigation that stopped them continues to ripple far beyond the courtroom. On the streets of Birmingham, Wolverhampton, and Walsall, the cocaine these men smuggled had already left scars. Each kilo was destined to be cut, sold, and pushed into communities. Police estimated the cartel's supply line stretched well beyond the 150 kilograms seized in that van. With EncroChat logs suggesting multi-ton imports, the damage done before arrests will never be fully measured. For law enforcement, the case became a benchmark. Detective Chief Inspector Pete Cook described it as a far-reaching investigation that spanned importation, exportation, wholesale supply, and money laundering. ROCU teams had not only intercepted shipments, they had dismantled the infrastructure of an organized crime group that believed itself untouchable. The methods exposed, frozen food consignments, cash hidden in tires and compressors, encrypted communications, have since been studied across the UK. They show how easily criminal networks exploit legitimate supply chains and how vital intelligence sharing and digital forensics are in countering them. In the Midlands, the story struck a nerve. These weren't faceless traffickers from abroad. They were men living in local communities, running businesses, raising families. Their downfall reminded many that organized crime doesn't always wear a stereotype. Sometimes it looks like the man next door. Community groups responded with renewed urgency. Addiction charities pointed to the seizure as proof of how vast the pipeline is, urging more funding for treatment. Youth programs warned of the lure that fast cash and encrypted phones hold for younger recruits. And local councils acknowledged the challenge of rebuilding trust when ordinary commerce, chicken pallets, service vans had been weaponized for crime. In the end, the frozen chicken cartel showed both the ingenuity of organized crime and the determination of those fighting it. For the gang, their elaborate disguises became the very evidence that sealed their fate. For investigators, it was a reminder that even the most sophisticated smuggling lines can be exposed. The message was clear: crime may hide in plain sight, but it cannot stay hidden forever. The case of the frozen chicken cartel ended not with a shootout or a dramatic escape, but with the quiet unwrapping of pallets in a cold store. What looked like food turned out to be evidence. What looked like tires held not air, but £500,000 in dirty cash. What sounded like harmless chatter on encrypted phones revealed the inner workings of a multi-ton supply line. For months, the gang believed they had built a system that was untouchable. They disguised their crimes in the most ordinary of things: chicken, tires, compressors, vans. Yet those same disguises became their undoing. Each seizure, each cracked message stripped away the illusion until the truth stood bare. In August 2024, when 10 men were sentenced to more than 80 years in prison, the frozen chicken trick was finished. The network was broken, but the story stands as a warning. Organized crime doesn't always wear a mask or carry a weapon. Sometimes it hides in the food chain, in everyday commerce, right in front of us. And when the cold store doors closed for the last time, one thing was clear: the cartel's empire was frozen forever.